Hi guys, my name is Elizabeth. I'm here to talk to you about fever, hypothermia and rash. As always, I'll only be talking about the important points here. Usually the temperature is lower in the morning and higher in the evening. For fever, the temperature should be at least more than 37.2 degrees Celsius, or in Fahrenheit we would say 98.9 degree Fahrenheit or more. This is known as fever. We should note that in fever, the hypothalamic set point is increased. There is another term called fever of unknown origin or FUO, otherwise known as pyrexia of unknown origin or PUO. For fever of unknown origin, the temperature should be more than 38.3 degrees Celsius or 101 degree Fahrenheit on 2 or more occasions. Also, the illness duration should be more than 3 weeks. There should not be any immunocompromised state or any laboratory or radiological findings. Another term is hyperpyrexia. The temperature should be more than 41.5 degrees Celsius or more than 106.7 degree Fahrenheit. This occurs in CNS hemorrhages and severe infections. Another term is hyperthermia. Here, there is uncontrolled increase in body temperature, like fever. But there is a difference. This is that the hypothalamic set point is not changed. The hypothermia does not involve any pyrogenic molecules. That is the reason why the hypothalamic set point is not changed. Now, there is another term called pyrogen. Any fever-causing substance is known as a pyrogen. It can be endogenous or exogenous. Exogenous pyrogens are microbial toxins, lipopolysaccharides, superantigens, etc. While endogenous pyrogens are interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrosis factor or TNF, such cytokines. For more information, we can refer to this table. Now, let's come to the pathogenesis of fever. So, what are the substances that cause fever? Pyrogens. Pyrogens can be exogenous or endogenous, as we discussed earlier. These exogenous pyrogens react with or interact with the molecules inside the host cell, and they produce pyrogenic cytokines or endogenous pyrogens. The examples of which we've discussed earlier. The pyrogenic cytokines stimulate the production of prostaglandin E2. The prostaglandin E2 is produced from arachidonic acid near the hypothalamic regulatory center. Arachidonic acid is released from cell membranes by the enzyme phospholipase A2. PGE2 or prostaglandin E2 raises the set point in the thermoregulatory center. The pyrogenic cytokines also induce the production of PGE2 in the periphery, which is responsible for myalgia, arthralgia, malaise, etc. that accompany fever. When hypothalamic set point increases, it causes peripheral vasoconstriction. So, it results in heat conservation. The patient feels cold as a result of blood shunting into internal organs. There are other mechanisms of heat production, namely shivering, increased hepatic thermogenesis, etc., that help to raise the body temperature to a new set point. So, the question is, why does body have such a mechanism? Fever is a defense adaptation. So, when the person has fever, that is, when the person raises his or her body temperature, it interferes with the growth and virulence of some bacterial and viral pathogens. Fever also slightly increases the immune reaction and increases chemotatic, phagocytic and bactericidal activity of PMNL cells. So, if a person does not have a good immunity, an intact immunogenic response, or if the person is of an extreme age, there won't be a prompt febrile illness. So, these persons are at a greater risk of succumbing to the infection. So, what are the changes that happen in fever? There is a set of systemic responses that occur in fever. This includes increase in metabolic rate, increase in heart rate, increase in blood pressure. The fluid loss increases by evaporation and sweating. There is increased respiratory rate, chills occur, rigor occur in certain cases. There will be headache. There can also be other features like delirium, excessive sweating, muscle pain. There can be feverishness or even herpes labialis. Fever may activate the latent viral infection herpes simplex, which causes vesicles at mucocutaneous junctions of the nose and lips. This is known as herpes labialis. Now, let's see how we approach a patient with fever. To fever, we give antipyretics. Antipyretics are used in viral and bacterial infections where they relieve symptoms without slowing the resolution of the infection. But sometimes doctors withhold the use of antibiotics. They do not give antibiotics. Why? This is to evaluate the effectiveness of a particular antibiotic they give, or for diagnosing certain conditions with temperature, pulse, dissociations, or maybe in case of relapsing fevers like infection with Plasmodium or Borrelia species. In such cases, antipyretics are not given. So what all aspects of fever should be looked for? Any other associated symptoms like eye congestion, skin rashes, erythematous blanching rash, palatal petechiae, any tonsillar enlargements, etc. should be looked for. The second point is the duration of fever. Duration of fever can be of different types in different diseases. A fever of more than about 5 to 7 days with gastrointestinal symptoms with or without melena may be typhoid fever. This may also have a palpable soft spleen. Fever with clubbing of fingers and splinter hemorrhages in the nail bed may be of congenital or rheumatic valvular heart disease. Maybe infective endocarditis. Another aspect of fever is known as the pattern of fever. Fever is of 3 types: continuous, remittent and intermittent. Also, another category of periodic fever is also seen. Continuous fever is when the temperature is persistently elevated with diurnal variation of less than 1 degree Celsius. For example, the second week of typhoid. Now, the second variety is remittent fever. In remittent fever, the temperature is persistently elevated with diurnal variation of more than 1 degree Celsius. That is, for example, typhoid fever in the first week, or brucellosis, or leptospirosis. These are the examples. Now coming to intermittent fever. Intermittent fever, the temperature is discontinuous, touching the normal at least once in 24 hours. This may be seen in pyogenic infections, lymphomas, tuberculosis, bacteremias, malaria and others. The fourth type is periodic fever. These show a regular periodicity in their occurrence. Fever occurring on alternate days with 1 day interval in between is called tertian periodicity. For example, in Vivax malaria, benign tertian malaria. There are also quartan periodicity, which is seen in quartan malaria. So, what are the laboratory investigations we can do? Neutrophil leukocytosis suggests a pyogenic infection. So, it's probably bacterial. A neutropenia, on the other hand, is probably a viral infection. Leukopenia with relative or absolute lymphocytosis can also occur in viral infections. Atypical lymphocytes are seen in Epstein-Barr virus infection, HIV infection, dengue, rubella, viral hepatitis, etc. A monocytosis is seen in typhoid or tuberculosis. Eosinophilia, on the other hand, is seen in parasitic infections, filariasis, tropical pulmonary eosinophilia, hypersensitivity, etc. We can do culture, gram stain, demonstration of parasites like malaria, demonstration of antibodies to specific pathogen, detection of bacterial, fungal or viral antigens, detection of very minute quantities of foreign nucleic acid, and also we can use histopathological techniques. Now we come to another topic, fever of unknown origin. We have already discussed the definition of FUO. Now we come to the etiology. What are the reasons of FUO? It can be of mainly 4 reasons. 1. Infection. 2. Malignancy. 3. Connective tissue disorders. And 4. A miscellaneous cause. Infections can be occult tuberculosis, intra-abdominal infections, other infections like enteric fever with atypical presentation, viral infections like IMN, infections mononucleosis, fungal infections, etc. Malignancy. About 20% of the malignancies can lead as FUO. For example, leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, etc. Or there can also be solid tumors like renal cell carcinoma, liver, colon, stomach and pancreatic cancers. Now coming to connective tissue disorders. Temporal arthritis, polymyalgia rheumatica, vaginous granulomatosis, adult Still's disease, etc. are connective tissue disorders that can present as FUO. Now there are miscellaneous other diseases like maybe DVT, pulmonary embolism, thyroiditis, etc. There can also be factitious fever. That is when there is an elevation of temperature self-induced by patients, especially young women working in health profession. There can be nosocomial FUO. This is a term that denotes fever above 38.3 degrees Celsius lasting for more than 72 hours, developing in a patient who is febrile on admission to hospital. This can be because of pneumonia, urinary tract infection, catheter-related infection, Clostridium difficile colitis, cytomegalovirus infection, etc. Now there is neutropenic FUO. Here the fever is more than 38.3 degrees Celsius, lasting for more than 72 hours in a patient with absolute neutrophil count less than 500 per cubic millimeter, or expected to reach that level in 1 to 2 days. Now there is HIV associated FUO. Fever is a common accompaniment of HIV infection which leads to immunodeficiency. The common infectious agents are Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium avium complex, Pneumocystis carinii, disseminated cryptococcosis, toxoplasmosis, nocardiosis, etc. So now we come to a diagnosis of FUO. So how do we diagnose? A careful attention should be given to the history and there should be complete physical examination. It should be repeated whenever necessary, maybe in a weekly interval or even shorter. So when we we have to ask about travel history or even occupational history. Occupational history can give a clue about an exposure to maybe birds as in case of psittacosis, or animals in case of toxoplasmosis and brucellosis. We have to examine ocular fundi. For example, Roth spots are seen in infective endocarditis, choroid tubercles seen in miliary tuberculosis, and also CMV retinitis. We have to assess the patient regularly clinically. We have to look for skin rash, skin nodules, conjunctival petechiae, clubbing, splinter hemorrhages, etc. We have to do digital rectal examination. It may give an idea about a perianal disease, which may suggest inflammatory bowel disease or local sepsis or an abscess or rectal carcinoma, prostatitis, prostatic malignancy, etc. Even though our first clinical examination we get as negative, we have to repeat it either weekly or, as I said, maybe shorter. The investigations we have to do are especially a complete blood count, erythrocyte sedimentation rates, and we have to also assess the urine. A midstream urine sample should be taken and should be given for microscopy. A bacterial count more than 10⁵ organisms per milliliter may suggest urinary tract infection. So how do we isolate the infective agent? A blood culture can be done, a PCR can be done, a rise in serum uric acid level. This can suggest a rapid cell turnover occurring in malignancies like lymphoma. A rise in alkaline phosphatase, especially the hepatic isoenzymes, should indicate a liver cell involvement. We also do a Mantox test. This is a commonly done test to detect allergy to tuberculoprotein. A positive Mantox test indicates the possibility of tuberculosis infection, a past infection or even an active infection. Imaging studies we can use are X-ray imaging, ultrasound imaging, echocardiography, and other imaging modalities like CT, MRI, PET, PET scan, etc. Also, isotope bone scan can be used for detecting malignancies, osteomyelitis, septic arthritis, etc. Now we come to the treatment of FUO. So, how do we treat? There is symptomatic treatment. The symptomatic treatment includes antipyretics. So, which are the definite indications of antipyretics? Hyperpyrexia is the most urgent indication to bring down temperature. Significant somatic symptoms like headache and body ache, or any coexisting symptomatic coronary artery disease or cardiac failure, a cerebrovascular disease, a nervous system dysfunction or a head injury, epileptic patients, or children with history of febrile convulsions. Such patients should be definitely given antipyretics. Pregnancy and psychiatric illness are relative indications to lower the temperature since complications are more likely in them. Now coming to the diet in fever. Since fever increases metabolism, high-calorie diet is recommended. Adequate fluid and electrolytes are also important to avoid dehydration. We have to observe oral hygiene. Diets containing at least 1,500 calories and about 3.5 to 4 liters of fluids in various forms should be administered. It is preferable to avoid foods which produce a sense of bloating and discomfort. Now we come to antibiotics. Fever should be treated with antipyretics and not with antibiotics. It is a common practice to give a trial of empirical antibiotics. So, for different cases of FUO, different treatment modalities are taken. For example, treatment of a classic FUO If the condition is stable and no etiological diagnosis is arrived, avoid empirical therapy. However, if a undiagnosed patient too ill to permit prolonged observation, empirical treatment may be considered based on best clinical judgment. Treatment of a neutropenic FUO after sending the specimens of culture for organisms, empirical broad spectrum antibiotic coverage for pseudomonas such as piperacillin or along with gentamicin or amikacin should be initiated. If clinical features point to a fungal infection, we have to give antifungal drugs. In case of HIV, we have to give empirical anti-tuberculous therapy also because tuberculosis can also happen in HIV very often. The treatment of nosocomial FUO, IV lines may have to be changed and it have to be cultured. The empirical antibiotics may have to be given depending upon the microbial prevalence of the environment. Now, another class of drugs that can be used are glucocorticoids and as we said anti-tuberculous agents, especially in HIV infection. Now there is a new drug called anakinra. Anakinra is a recombinant form of a naturally occurring interleukin-1 receptor antagonist. It blocks the activity of both interleukin-1A alpha and interleukin-1 beta and is extremely effective in the treatment of many autoinflammatory syndromes. A therapeutic trial with anakinra can be considered in patients whose FUO has not been diagnosed after later stage diagnostic tests. Coming to the prognosis. When no underlying source of FUO is unidentified, after prolonged observation of more than 6 months, the prognosis is generally good. Now we come to a very small topic called rash. Only the main points are discussed here. Rash can be associated with a fever. The lesion types can be different. It can be a macule, a papule, a nodule, a vesicle, a pustule, a purpura or an ulcer. The configuration can be different like annular or target configuration. The arrangement can be different. The distribution also can be different. It can be central or peripheral. So rash is classified as follows. A centrally distributed maculopapular eruption is the first one. For example, viral exanthems, exanthematous drug-induced eruptions. Now, a peripheral eruption is the second one. For example, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. A confluent desquamative erythema is the third one. For example, toxic shock syndrome. A vesiculobullous eruption, for example, varicella, primary HSV infection, etc. is the fourth type. Now, coming to the fifth type, urticaria-like eruptions in the presence of fever, usually in urticarial vasculitis caused by serum sickness, connective tissue disease, infections like hepatitis B, enteroviral infection, parasitic infection or a malignancy like lymphoma. This is the fifth type. Now coming to the sixth type, a nodular eruption. It is seen in a disseminated fungal infection, erythema nodosum, Sweet syndrome, etc. A purpuric eruption is seen in meningococcemia, viral hemorrhagic fever, disseminated gonococcemia, etc. Now, the next type is an eruption with an ulcer or a scar like rickettsial disease, anthrax, etc. The laboratory tests we can do are CBC with a differential ESR, a C-reactive protein count, etc. So now we come to the last topic of discussion, that is hyperthermia. So what is the etiology of hyperthermia? An exogenous heat exposure like a heat stroke or an endogenous heat production like a drug-induced hyperthermia or a malignant hyperthermia. These are the two mechanisms by which hyperthermia can result in a dangerously high internal temperature. So what is a heat stroke? Heat stroke is a thermoregulatory failure in association with a warm environment. It can be categorized as exertional and classic. Exertional is due to exercise in high heat and humidity, while classic is typically occurring in patients with chronic disease that predispose to heat-related illnesses. So, what are the clinical features of hyperthermia? High core temperature in association with an appropriate history, dry skin, hallucination, delirium, pupil dilation, muscle rigidity, and elevated levels of CPK. So, how do we diagnose such a patient? It can be difficult to diagnose from a case of fever. Clinical history is more often useful, like an exposure to heat or a treatment with a certain drug. Hyperthermic patients have hot, dry skin. Antipyretic agents do not lower their body temperature. This is in contrast with febrile patients who can have cold or hot skin. It's probably moist, and antipyretics can usually result in some lowering of the body temperature. So how do we treat a case of hypothermia? First, we have to initiate endotracheal intubation, CVP determination, continuous core temperature monitoring. Now we can go to cooling. Evaporative cooling should be done. Now, because there is a risk of dehydration, IV fluids are necessary. So that ends the topic of hypothermia also. We come to an end of today's session. This is a snippet of information. Acanthosis nigricans is a cutaneous marker for hyperinsulinemia. By this, I end today's session. Thank you.